Hello, everyone, and today I will be presenting my studies titled Teachers' Professional Roles in International Schools from a Sociological Perspective. In these presentations, I will briefly introduce the sociological perspective of education, explain the purpose and methodology of the studies, present the key findings from interviews with two teachers, and lastly, will conclude with the reflections on the role of teachers in contemporary educational environments. So, let's begin with a simple question here. What is the real role of the teachers in the classroom? Is it only to deliver the knowledge and complete the syllabus only? From a sociological perspective, schools are social institutions which shape students' identities, their behaviors, and also their social interactions. Teachers therefore act as agents of socializations, which influencing how students participate, communicate, and develop confidence. When a teacher encourages shy students to share their ideas during the discussions, the teacher is not only teaching the subject, but also helping the students to build their confidence and also their communication skills. So, the purpose of the study is to explore on how the teacher experience their professional roles within the social structure of the school. Basically, the study focuses on four research questions. Firstly, how teachers understand the role they play in school. Secondly, what institutional and societal expectations influence their work. Thirdly, how teachers manage difference among students. And finally, what type of support or challenge teachers experience in their schools environment. This study used a qualitative research approach which allowed us to understand teacher experience in depth. Data were collected through in-depth interview within the two experienced teachers from an international secondary school in Malaysia. The interview data were analyzed using thematic analysis, which help identify key patterns and themes related to teachers' role, expectations, and challenge. So during the interview, the teacher will share their real classroom situations, such as how they help students who struggle to understand a topic or they feel reluctant to participate in class. So let's come to our first informant, which is Miss Vivian. She is an English teacher with 5 years of teaching experience. She previously taught in a public secondary school before moving to an international school. Vivian focused on helping students develop their confidence in speaking English, particularly those who may feel nervous about making mistakes. For example, like when the students hesitate to speak in class, Vivian often begin with a very small group discussions, which allowing students to practice expressing their ideas in a supportive environment before speaking to the whole class. So let's move on to our second informant, which is Miss Olivia. And she is a chemistry teacher with 7 years of teaching experience in an international school. So it's quite long, and she can be counted as a senior teacher in science departments and support colleague in planning laboratory activities. So Olivia always emphasizes hand-on learning and real-life applications when teaching the chemistry. For example, she frequently conducts laboratory experiments which allow students to observe chemical reactions directly instead of let them learning from the textbook only. So let's come to our team one, which is the teacher's roles and professional identity. This lead to another important questions, which is do teachers only teach subject or do they play a broader roles in student development? Both teachers describe their roles as extending beyond subject instructions. Vivian focused on helping students build their confidence in communications, while Oliver encouraged students to develop scientific curiosity and critical thinking. For example, Vivian encouraged students to share their opinions during discussions. However, Olivia asked students to explain what they observed during the experiments and why the reactions occur. Need to have a communication with the students. So the team two, which is the schools and societal expectations. The second theme is quite interesting as well because they focus on the expectations that influence teachers' work. Both teachers here reported that their teaching practice are shaped by the expectations related to the academic performance, the curriculum requirements, and also the parental involvement. Vivian explained that parents often expect clear improvements in their children's English communication skills. Meanwhile, Olivia faced pressure to prepare students effectively for science examinations. For example, like parents may ask, how classroom activities are helping their children to improve academically or perform better in their exam. Are these expectations reflect what scholars describe as an accountability culture in education? So now move on to our theme 3, which is managing students' difference. This is another important question. And how do teachers manage classroom where students have very different ability and learning style? Both teachers explained that student diversity is a common challenge. Vivian observed that some students hesitate to speak English because they fear of making mistake or they feel like very shy to speak English. For example, to support these students, she always encouraged them to participate in a small group, allowing students to practice speaking gradually. And also, she will encourage the students to speak English with their parent as well, even though they are not an English speakers at home. Similarly, Olivia helps students who struggle with scientific concepts by using visual demonstrations and experiments, which make abstract ideas easier to understand. So let's move on to our last theme, which is the support and challenge. The fourth theme highlights both the support and the challenge teachers experience in their professional environments. Both teachers here emphasize that collaborations with colleagues is an important source of support. Teachers often share their ideas, their teaching materials, their teaching planning, and the strategy to help each other to improve their lessons. For example, Olivia sometimes guides the junior teacher in planning laboratory activities and ensuring the experiments are conducted safely. However, teachers also face challenges such as administrative workload, documentation tasks, and the communication with the parents. So, what is the key findings and the sociological implications? What do these findings tell us about the role of the student in modern education? The student shows that teacher roles are multi-phase. Teachers are responsible not only delivering academic content, but also for supporting students' confidence, engagement, and participations. For example, like Vivian adapt her teaching strategy to encourage students to speak confidently in English, while Olivia modified her lessons through experiments to help students understand the very complex scientific concept. From a sociological perspective, these examples illustrate on how teachers contribute to both students' academic learning and their social development. So let's come into our conclusions. And these studies highlight the complexity of teachers' professional roles within contemporary educational environments. Teachers must balance curriculum delivery, student diversities, parental expectations, and administrative responsibility. The experience of Vivian and Olivia shows that how teachers continuously adapt their teaching strategy to support both students' academic learning and their personal development. For example, discussion-based activities or experiments can make learning more engaging and meaningful for students in order to let the students to like the subject. Ultimately, when we examine the teacher experience closely, we begin to see that the education is not only about curriculum, but also about the social relationship that shape on how the student learns and grow. So before I conclude, I would like to leave a question for reflections. How can school better support teachers so that they can continue to guide and inspire students in increasingly demanding educational environments? So I appreciate your time and thoughtful attention. Thank you.